Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Good Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I actually thought it was really interesting how they did this episode with like the whole Dean and Beth situation. It was very reminiscent of how they handled the whole... Like, I want to say it was back in season 2 when Ruby was kind of found... Well, Ruby... and, told Annie and Beth about, I was kind of supposed to kind of rat you guys out and take you down. It's the only way to protect me and stand, like, I'm already blinking on that FBI agent's name. I want to say it was Turner, but I could be mistaken. It's James Leisure's character. I'm trying to remember. Regardless, that episode kind of showed you, like, it cut back and forth between, obviously Beth, present day, being pissed at Ruby for her betrayal, but obviously cutting back to when they were younger, actually kind of the beginning of their friendship, So I thought it was kind of interesting how they did that, kind of like we see the beginnings of Dean and Beth's relationship and just kind of see how things, like, slowly grew, like, in their earlier days, so... Also, I love his interactions with Annie, and she's saying all this stuff. He's like, right, so your sister said all that. It's like, yeah. It's like, well, if you want to get by. Even later on, it's like, oh, do you want anything from that vending machine? She's like, no, I'm good. He's like, good, because your sister robbed me of all my money. I just thought those were nice moments. Also, it's also a nice showcase to show that where they were. Yeah, they had some stumbles and falls along the way, but it also showed you, like, where they started out at and where the beautiful life they were able to build. Yes, there's some complications, once again, some bumps in the road, regardless of everything. And that's the thing for Beth. It's like, regardless of anything, Dean's a good guy. It's not like he's a terrible person, because in fact, he wanted to do it legit, but it's like she's the one that brought Rio into everything. Like, she's the reason why it's all falling apart now. So, when the time comes, she asks Rio for help on trying to, like, handle this, but obviously for Rio, it's like, honestly, this works out for everyone, because in a circumstance like this, you need a fall guy. It's like, he didn't know, that's why he handed over the book, so this is on me and not him. It's like, that him not knowing anything, that deniability is what makes him the perfect fall guy. So, I'm sorry, but, but it's like, hey, you sink this 8, corner pocket, I'll give you the money necessary to figure this out. And she does. After he does his little seduction thing of just kind of like, all right, lining up, it's just like, all right, bro, we don't have that relationship anymore. And she hits it, but it's like, of course, Rio's going to find a technicality out of it, being like, oh yeah, so take it out of the money, take the cut out of the money you owe me or whatever. And it's like, we can't make any money. Production is shut down. You know that. And it's like, well, that's why you need a fall guy. And it's just kind of like, what was the point of even talking to you? Like, oh, he enjoys it. He enjoys the game. It's like, this is all on him too, but... I mean, for him, he doesn't care because this doesn't blow back on them because it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Dean's taking a fall. And obviously, it's hitting Beth hard because there's also the thing of the kids don't know yet. Obviously, you had Ruby and Annie explaining, like, oh yeah, like he's away. Like, when he's coming back, when he's done, when will that be? And then Beth's explaining to the employees. It's like, oh, think of this as kind of a snow day. Eventually, things will get back to normal. It's like, I miss Gail, is what one of the employees said, and they walked away. But obviously, Eric's like, hey, you need anything from me? I'll do anything to help out my homie. So obviously there's a conversation that Beth's having, like, I need to turn myself in. And it's like, no, you've got 4 kids. And then, Beth looks at Ruby and is like, those are his kids too. So now it's a situation of trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. What can they do in this situation? Because it's just, there's no winning. Because for Beth, it's like, either I take the fall or he does. Like, she doesn't see any other way around this. So... Obviously, at the same time, you have Phoebe basically kind of blackmailing Dave, because it's like the whole thing of like, yeah, they've been married for 20 years, so how does she know about... It's like, well, you've got secrets of your own. He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, yeah, a certain someone you got into who loves to be a chatty Cathy about the whole thing. So give me 5 minutes with Dean. And she ends up getting her 5 minutes. And it's like, oh, here's that ramen, it's currency and stuff like that, which it still blows my mind that that's a thing. Like, that's not BS. That's like a real thing in prisons, apparently, like nowadays. Like, I remember hearing about that a couple years ago, like ramen's become the new currency. Because before it was cigarettes. I don't know if cigarettes still hold the same weight that they used to before, but it seemed like the new stuff is ramen. I don't know why. It's just a weird thing. But she's trying to say, like, oh, your wife, like, she uses people, and the moment she's done with people, she throws them away, which Dean's like, so that means you don't know my wife, So Because that isn't what Beth does. Beth doesn't like, because that's the thing. Like, Beth looks at herself as a bit of a monster. I don't think you are a monster. If you're willing to see, like, and feel bad about what you do, but that's the thing. How long can you feel bad about doing what you're doing and continue to make the same mistakes over and over again? That's what, that is the definition of insanity, right? But also, it's like, but I think the fact that you feel bad enough shows that, there's still a human side of you that's like, no, like, if you were a monster, you'd be Rio. You wouldn't care. Like, everyone is collateral damage. You're doing whatever you need to prove a point. And that's not who Beth is, but I think for her, it's still just kind of like, I've dragged my husband in this. He's innocent in all of this. And yeah, what kind of person am I? Still, having those conversations. So it's like, all right, they need to find a fall guy. And I love that. It's like, who did they turn to? Eric. And they're like putting this up to him. Like, they're presenting it like it's a resort or whatever. He's like, a jail. And he's like, wait, you're going to pay me more money than I've ever made. I'm going to get my own room. I could do this. I could do that. And they're like, yeah. And he was like, what's your shower situation? And they're like, probably groups. And he's like, all right. So he's kind of all for it and all about it. And it's like, okay, so we're probably going to have to get you on a crime or whatever so that they kind of arrest you and everything. All right. And the sad thing is, Eric's so down for it. It's like, oh man, you're actually kind of a good guy, Eric. And it's actually even sadder when we get into why, but nevertheless. To get some money from the strip club because they need a whole bunch of ones, so Stan kind of supplies that. We'll get to Stan's situation soon enough, but I mean, once again, that's always like the ramifications of one thing leads to another. It's always a ripple effect, those small ripples turn into massive waves later on down the road. So it's always interesting to see, what started off as a small thing ends up becoming so much bigger. Because basically Gene ended up finding out about what Stan was up to because it's like, oh, there's a fire truck thing. And then he walks in on him with the whole thing. It's like, oh, I also know the side hustle we were running with some of the girls. They go to parties. They rob the guys. That whole thing. So nevertheless, they get the money. They start making some fake money. They have to, it's like, oh, this is going to be our best work here. It's like, no, we need to make this sloppy so that Eric gets caught. So Eric goes into the bank and he's all about it. It's like, yeah, I'm right down to it. He's like, all right. He's so excited about it. Goes into the bank. It's like, I'm going to open an account. It's like, oh, you need about $50. Actually, how about 100,000? It's like, well, anything over 10,000, we have to report to IRS. All right, $10,000 in 10 different accounts. Sir, no, it's like, fine, 9,009 different accounts. And it's like, he's like, take my money, take my well-earned money. And they're like, sir, we don't get, it's like, check it if you want to. It's like, why would we need to check it? He's like, this is profiling. It's like, why? Because she won't take my hard-earned cash. And it's like, that isn't profiling. He was like, mustache. She's like, yeah, that's still, no. Cops show up. It's like, all right, and because Beth is like, oh, can we go? I don't want to see this. But Andy's like, no, come on, we got to watch. The police roll up and everything. All right, oh, like they're being real rough of Eric. It's like, oh man. And then the cops proceed to rob Eric. I guess Eric happened to stumble across. He just happened to get, brought in by two corrupt cops. So that's interesting. It'd be interesting if we end up ultimately finding out they're connected to Rio in some shape or form. And that was like some middle finger Rio was doing just to kind of screw them over. And it's like, wait, what? And then Eric just comes over. Beth's like, what happened? He was like, I just got robbed. And Ruby's like, by the cops? They're sitting in there talking about it. And it's like, well, Eric's coming up with the different plans of like, oh, we could do this. And he was like, it's like, well, we can't do more, we can't make more money. He's like, let's do it to a different bank. It's like, well, we spent all the money making that, so like we're tapped out, we have nothing else. It's like, oh, he was saying like, why don't go in there waving a gun around, start shouting. It's like, so you can get arrested and put in jail with Dean rather than switching places with him. And they're like, right. Then he's also coming out, they're like, how about we track down this cops, we hit the brakes, boom, like basically try to rob the cops of the money. And it's like, just stop talking, stop giving ideas. And it's just like, why is it so hard for you to get arrested? He's like, because I'm invisible. And they're like, what does that mean? He was like, well, it's always been like that. Smack dab in the middle of 9 kids. You get used to being left in a hot car. And everyone's like, Jesus. And Beth is like, that's horrible. He was like, yeah, but things changed the moment the D-man got hired. For him, it's like, I got invited out for like lunches and stuff like that. He started calling me Eric. It's like, what does everyone else call you? Scott. And then Ruby's like, I can see you. I can see you being a Scott. Definitely gives off Scott vibes, and he kind of nods along. But it's sad that's why this all, because poor Eric is so invisible that that's why he wants to help out his homie Dean, because it's like, hey, he's a good guy. Like he made And it's like, oh, they don't make him like Dean anymore. But then he was like, but, you know, obviously I don't have to tell you. And Beth's like, I know. Because I think it's a situation where she kind of realizes, like, man, I've taken him for granted. And now when the time comes, it's like everything. I mean, you already came close to losing him when he got shot. And it's also because this isn't a situation of his making. This is a situation of her own making. Like, you know. And so when the time comes, she tries to go to Phoebe to go, hey, all right, let me tell you the story about everything. Wait, aren't you going to write this down and record anything? It's like, it's too late. Why is it too late? Your husband already pled guilty. And I think that's the beautiful, because I think for him, it's like, maybe in his mind, it's like, he loves Beth. It's like, I'm not going to betray you no matter what. Like, even if it benefits me, because I think for him, it's like, this all started because of me. So I think he trails everything back. I think for him, it's like, no matter what her reasoning is, like, I think Beth has always put their family first, like, despite everything. So I think for him, it's like, I make this sacrifice for you because I do love you, you know? I think that's why he didn't want to see her, because it wasn't because he was cutting any deal. It was also because he was pleading guilty, and he knew that if she found out ahead of time, she would have tried to stop him, you know? So, and I think for him, it's probably a thing of the kids are better off with, you know, you around and you handling things, because you're usually on top of everything anyway. So it's fine with me taking the fall as long as you're still around for our kids. And I think that just makes Beth feel even worse. I mean, that's the complicated thing. Like, each of them is kind of feeling this, because obviously for Beth, it's like, you know, the kids, it's like, oh, you're a great mom, your kids love you. But it's like, yeah, but they don't know what I do. And then obviously for Annie, it's like, Ben hates me. And it's just like, oh, we're monsters. Like, it's just, you know, and obviously Ruby doesn't know the ins and outs, but she kind of gets a vibe about, like, yeah, something's up with Stan, which obviously it's like, Gene's like, yo, I need you to go in there and get some money. It's like, well, what if they don't want to get the money? It's like, well, you stay in there until you do. He's like, man, I got a family covered. You should have thought about that before you try to take from mine. He's like, all right, do you want the car on and off? Play my yacht rock playlist, and it's just on. Okay, that's the end of the story for Stan in this particular episode. So who knows how much other work he's going to have to do. I'm wondering if Stan could let him know about the ins and outs of everything. Like, maybe there'll be a collaboration of, like, maybe we can start bringing in Gene into the equation, that maybe that kind of offsets some of this Rio business as well. Granted, I'm sure doubling down and, like, hooking up with another criminal to do business isn't going to be good. Yeah, Dean's taking the fall, but obviously, like, Phoebe, I think, well, there's not much she can do now, like, now that Dean's taking the fall, because I think even if Beth confessed, it's just going to look like, no, he gave his confession, and all without any solid evidence against Beth, and everything pointing towards Dean. It's just going to come off like, oh, this is just a wife trying to protect her husband, so it's not going to be admissible, like, unless there's, like, hard evidence proving she's the one responsible, you know? So that's the complicated situation on that front. Hell, even the confrontation with the hitman, because he wants her to go to Fiji and everything. It's like, Jesus, you know? It's like, well, we're going to, like, you know, what am I supposed to do? It's like, you could do stuff over the pants. And she's like, no, about Dean, not the hitman. And so when they had the conversation, he's like, he broke into our house, which is like, yep, one of Rio's favorite movies. It's like, why does everyone just, like, come into my house whenever they want to? So he's like, come to Fiji. You know, it's like, oh, I can make arrangements for your kids. I hear your husband's tied up. So she takes off her panties and she's like, all right, you want to do it? Let's do it. He's like, no, not let's. Like, she's like, what? Isn't this what you want? Like, I do whatever it is you, like, you, this is what needs to be done for you to actually do the job right. He's like, no, like, this isn't what I want. It's like, what? Did you think, like, we'd fall in love and stuff like that? He's like, I thought, you know, I thought you wanted more. And she's like, from you? He's like, from your life. It's like, because she's like, I don't want to be like you. He was like, too late. You know, you're already in a position where you're hiring me to kill somebody for you. Once again, it's not like you're killing an innocent person. You're killing Rio, who's not the greatest human being in general, but at the same time, it's still a thing of, it's a slippery slope. Like, killing someone is completely different. It's still a line they haven't crossed yet. Beth came close to killing Rio, sure, but she hasn't fully crossed that line. The fact that she was willing to speaks volumes, but now you're actually hiring a hitman to do it, so... But she kind of put him in his place. It's like, well, then pull up your bit boy pants and do the damn job I hired you for. And he was like, okay. Now, this is going to be interesting to see what this means, because his feelings for Beth are what kind of kept him, like, you know. But granted, it's like, you know, when I get back, I'll do this job for you. And he was actually kind of heartbroken. I hope we don't get something crazy like, oh, he ended up... It's, you know, their luck. It's not going to be easy. Either Rio is going to get him and kill him, or maybe because he's so heartbroken, he's going to let Rio know, hey, so Beth hired me to kill you, but I'm not going to. Woman broke my heart, yada, yada, yada. Maybe, maybe. I just don't think things are going to go the way. Like, either, I think somehow the hitman's going to end up dead. Now, whether it's because of Rio, because of some crazy, weird circumstances of maybe he was depressed and it's a weird thing to say. Maybe he gets a little suicidal because he actually did have a thing for Bassett, you know, so... But when it's all said and done, though, Beth, you know, ends up ultimately telling the kids the truth. And obviously her and Dean at the end are smiling towards each other. That despite the circumstances, like, Beth is still going to try and find a way to fix this. But it's like, you know, there's still love there. They are still a family regardless. So, despite the complicated circumstances they find themselves in. What I also think is interesting, too, in this episode is, you know, Ben and Annie. And, you know, Ben's like, what? She's like, because... Annie's trying to give him, you know, it's like, oh, breakfast for dinner, you love it, so you're going to eat it. It's like, if you don't like, I just want, you know, just because you hate me. He's like, whoa, you think I hate you? It's like, considering your reaction to you, it's like, you haven't talked to me in like 3 days. She's like, but, you know, and obviously that means like, her relationship with Ben means the world to her. Like, he's her foundation, her, you know, her shining star, why she does what she does. And for Ben, it's like, God, like, just because I haven't talked to you for 3 days doesn't mean I hate you. It's like, but like I said, it's like, from the perspective of your mom, it's like, sadly, Annie doesn't think much of herself as a mom, and doesn't think she's doing a good job. So from her perspective, it looks like, oh, I'm screwing up big time. So, but I thought it was sweet, you know, Ben sitting down with her and being like, yeah, you know, I've got to figure out some stuff about like obviously like school and like lacrosse and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you can, you know, because she had suggested earlier, it's like, if you want to, you can start, you know, staying over more with your dad. And it's like, yeah, that would make going, you know, back and forth easy. But it's like, she said that just at the moment, but now that, like, oh, you actually want to do that. No, I'll make it happen. I'll talk to Nancy. And it's like, yeah, I can come back like on like every other weekend or whatever, you know, obviously, you know, not because she's like, if you want to, but Ben's like, no, not that I want to, just that it'll be easier that way. It's like, that's not what your mom wants to hear. I think it's kind of a situation where you should think about what your mom would want to hear, that you would want to come back. No, I'll come back because I want to be with you and stuff like that. So things are better, but obviously Annie's still having a hard time because it's like, yeah, I got to put on his brave face. Like, I can't, like, because I think for her, it's like, I got to do this because I got to give Ben his space because maybe this way we'll be on better terms. Like, maybe he'll feel like if I make better moves as a mom, and probably in her mind, if I'm a quote-unquote better mom, then maybe he'll be more open to, like, bringing me into his world and let me see and get to know him again. So that's kind of where things currently stand with Annie and Ben. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. How long is it going to be before Ruby finds out about what Stan's up to, what's next for Dean and Beth under their circumstances, Annie, the whole situation with Ben and home dude that she invited out last episode. Last time we saw they were watching a movie together, but it's like, is that going to turn into anything at all? We'll see. Also, still the whole Josh angle that's, you know, needs to be continued. And then on top of that, we have the ending where, like, obviously they're packing up all the stuff from the shop. And in that moment, you know, Phoebe ends up picking up the picture. Obviously, Beth's message to Dean is on the back. Now, what, I guess it's like it being written in her handwriting and the fact is that she wrote it, I think that can be conclusive enough evidence to overturn him being guilty. At the very least, it can put her under investigation. So, granted, Phoebe doesn't see it. She's just looking at the picture, so whether or not something happens or whether she just puts it back or she completely misses that or she does manage to turn it around and see it. It's like they made sure to show you that she never turned the picture around, so she didn't see the message because I guess because of the pen and just the nature of the photo, it doesn't bleed through. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front as well. I'm interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.